Hey everyone.
How's it going, everyone?
Hey, hey Kyle.
How's everyone doing tonight?
I'm doing all right, Kyle. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, cool. I don't know if you mentioned something about looking at my file. I mean, I think I have something wrong with the Palm because I have a whole bunch of annotation errors everywhere, but it
Yeah.
might
Is
be my
that is that for Lombok?
yes.
Okay. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I walked you through in the course material how to install Lombok, I think in one of the videos.
No, I have long block. I have long block dependency on here too,
But
but
it's just not working for you.
yeah, I have build and project underlined red
Mm,
for the Maven.
yeah. I'm pretty sure it sounds like there's some issue with Lombok. Did you get it put into your I know for certain um IDEs and whatnot, you have to actually get it to them, and sometimes it's not readily apparent. Um,
So it's not the long block, it's the Maven that's giving me errors. It's the Maven dependencies and it's the Spring Boot dependency.
hmm. Have you tried creating a new project with Lombok at all?
Yeah, I'm on that week where you have to use long block. So I know long block is up to date.
So Lombok has worked for you before.
Yeah, my other
Okay.
project. Mhm.
Yeah, it might just be an issue with um, your program itself. I'm not sure. I know, like Jolene and Stephanie, they're a little bit more knowledgeable how to clean all that sort of stuff up. I think Stephanie has an office hours tomorrow, so I'd definitely jump in tomorrow and ask her about it because
Okay. You wouldn't
yeah,
know putting a like for example your palm in here will make it better?
my palm, I don't know, it's worth a shot. Um, for what you're doing for your week stuff, your core stuff, like this is different, like the JPA stuff. So you're not gonna have the same dependencies.
No, no, yeah, we're talking about this project. Yeah,
Okay, so it's the JPA itself.
yeah.
Okay. Also, like I've said before, you do not have to use Lombok for this stuff. You can manually do your getters and setters, and I can actually show you a little bit about how to do that.
Well, it's kind of like I followed through the whole week one video. And it's like the entity getters and setters, add ID, add generated value. And I do believe it's part of the POM for the same reason because the POM is like screaming out red everywhere. Well, a couple spots. That's why.
It could be your Spring version too, if as long as you have under Spring version 3.0, a lot of this will work. If it's this isn't for like over Spring version 3.0, that's a little bit different. I know Jacob brought up a good point to me, and he was asking about what does JPA stand for, if it was Jakarta or Java. And actually, after Spring 3.0, it's referred to as the Jakarta Persistence API. And there's a little bit difference to how to manage Jakarta dependencies versus like before Spring 3.0, it was Java Persistence API. Um, and it's just a little bit differences. The reason why I've been using this is because it seems like under Spring 3.0, you can deal with Swagger a little bit easier. There's something going on with Swagger that once you get to 3.0, I'm not totally positive how to get around that. And I know the coursework was talking about using like 2.6.1, but I've just figured anything under 3.0, everything typically works pretty fine. You can also use like Postman for stuff, but I want to keep it simple for you guys, so I'm just using Swagger. Um, yeah,
So,
but anyways, I can start out. I'll share my screen, um,
do you
and I'll
mind if
just
I see your POM file before anything?
yeah, yeah. I
Or
can
not?
I can show you my Palm file.
It's gonna suck to code along and not have a whole program to run on.
Yeah, 1 second. All right, can you see
Yeah.
my Spring Tool suites? All right.
Uh-huh.
All right, let's clear this out. So
That looks
see,
good.
this is my version
Yeah.
2.7.10. Like I said, if it's above 3.0, you're gonna have a little bit more issues with how I'm showing it.
Mhm.
Um, that's kind of the big one right there. Then we also have Spring Boot Starter Data JPA, Spring Boot Starter Web.
Okay, see, that's my problem. Wait, because you have Spring Footer, then you have two dependencies. Oh, okay. Never mind. That's still all the same. Yeah.
DevTools, MySQL Connector J, Lombok, and this isn't needed. We're not doing any unit testing, but it's just kind of what comes in. And then also the Spring Doc Open API UI, and then also there's your plugins.
Oh, I see what I did wrong. I put the dependency in the last one when it should have been in the middle. Awesome. All right, I'm up again. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and if there's ever any issue with these getters and setters, one thing you can do, I'll just delete it real quick. What you can do is go into source and generate getters and setters. And then you can pick which ones you want to do. You can generate. And there's your getters and setters. But for this, I think Lombok's just easier. But if you have a problem with Lombok, there's always that option there. All right. So last week we created a user and a role entity. We are focusing on the user with the user repository. We created user service. We created two methods: save user and get all users. Implemented them into the user service IMPL. We created an exception. We haven't used this yet, but we will use this tonight. And the user controller, we set this up to do a post mapping and get mapping. There's one thing that I want to show you guys, maybe later after we get through with everything. I know that some people have had issues with the JSON, and there's a way of not doing request body, but actually using request params and not messing around with the JSON itself. So I might get into that if we have a little bit of time towards the end. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the user service and we're going to declare some of our new methods. So first thing is we're going to try and do a get by ID instead of a get all. So we're going to do public user get user by ID. And then we're going to call the type, which is a long, and we're going to call it ID. And that is the first method that we're going to do. The next one is we're going to do our update. Public user update user and we're going to reference our ID as well. And finally, for the delete, it's a little bit different. We'll do public void delete user, and we're going to reference the ID for this as well. All right. I also want to show you guys something else a little bit later, but I want to get through these three right off the bat. So we save this, then we have to go to our implementation, and we have to add the unimplemented methods. And as you can see, it's created those methods for us in here. Now we just need to change this around a little bit. So for the first one, we're going to return user repository dot find by ID, and then dot or else row. And this is where we're going to do a lambda. then I like to create a new line feed, new resource not found exception. And in here, we are going to enter an user ID, and then we're gonna have the ID there as well. And that's it for the get user by ID. We're gonna get back into the controller a little bit later, but we're just gonna get through all these methods real quick. Now we're gonna do update user. And here we're going to create a user object called existing user equals user repository. I'll actually copy all of this instead of writing all that out. We can just copy what we're doing right here. Okay. Now we want to call the existing user dot set username. Then we want to call the user get username. Now user repository dot save, and we want to save the existing user. And we will return the existing user. Does all this make sense? Anybody have any questions?
So you just made a user to update the user, right?
So with this, we're calling an existing user. This is the update user. So we would have already saved this user, and we're calling the existing user, and we want to find it by its ID. If we put in a wrong ID, we want it to throw a resource not found exception and tell us why. The user ID with ID, let's say 1000 doesn't exist. Now that's what it says. So then we'll get the username and we'll set the username, but we have to first get the user and get the username, right? Before setting it, we have to get the original one. And after we set that new username, user repository, and we save the existing user and that user repository, then we return that existing user. I know it seems a little bit more complicated than all the other methods that we've done so far, but this would be the same way as if you had a password right here. If we had user password, it'd be existing user dot set password user dot get password, and you just put on all your other stuff right here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, right now we only have username, so that's all we're going to do. We don't need to put in the ID. We're already finding by the ID. We're not going to change the ID.
So Kyle, so you mentioned how I've seen how when you run your computer, you don't have to implement the annotation. How is that?
What annotation?
For example, like at override, you don't hover over it and you don't put implement. I mean, yeah, you don't implement it.
Oh, so the reason why that happens is when you're in your user service, you're going to make the methods right here. And this user service implementation implements user service. So if there's any new methods here in the user service, I can hover over this and it can say add unimplemented methods. And it'll automatically generate these methods, right? So this is an auto-generated one. Just makes it easier doing it that way. All right, so now we'll do delete user, and it's the same thing as all the ones above with the IDs. We want to copy and paste that above, and Then we don't return anything, but because it's a void, right? You can't return a delete, but we'll call user repository dot delete and delete. Actually, the best way I've found to do this is delete by ID, and then there, delete by ID, and then we can do existing user dot get user ID. Okay, kind of similar to up above, just calling that method. You can also delete the user itself. I like doing it this way because that way you're tying in the existing user as well. So then we save this, and the next thing we want to do is go to the controller. Go to user controller, and we want to do get mapping because we want to do the one where we're getting by ID. For this one, we have to have a unique path. Anytime that you have more than one get mapping, it all has to be different. Like this one, you don't need to put anything, but the next one and everyone else, every other get mapping that you get, it has to have a unique path. So we're going to say user ID here. Now we're going to create our response entity. And this response entity obviously is our user. And it will call this get user by ID. Right here, we're going to have to do a path variable. At path variable. And we're going to make sure that our path variable is our user ID, since that is our primary key. We need to do the type, call ID, and from here, we will return a new response entity. Call the user service dot, and we want to get user by ID, and then we throw in our HTTP status. Okay. Oops. I want to make sure that this is closed right here. Okay. So this is our get by ID. We're going to check out all these when we're finished up. And now we want to do our update. So our put mapping. And a lot of this, I am just going to copy user ID because a lot of this we're going by ID. So same thing here, but it's put mapping, so it can be the same. Same thing. We want a response entity. And it's going to be much the same for these first parts. We will update user. We'll call that method. And this is very similar to above. We want to get the path variable. And we also want to request body. Oh, I need an annotation here. At request body. And make sure it's the Spring framework and not the Swagger. That's important there. User. That looks okay. Then, very much same as up above, we're going to return new response entity, user service, and we want to update user and HTTP status dot okay. All right, there's our update user. Finally, we want a delete mapping, and same thing as before, we're going to use the user ID. And this is kind of different, but generally the same thing as what we have been doing. We want a response entity. But we're going to return a string. Delete user. Same thing as above. We want to copy this path variable. And we want to call our user service. This is a little bit different. Delete user ID. Then we want to return new response entity string. And right here, we will do a string user space plus ID plus space has been deleted. Then from here, same thing as above, HTTP status, okay. All right, now it's time to check if this all actually works. That's the fun part. So we'll go into oops. Go into Firefox here. Okay, then we'll go into Swagger. Oh, first we need to start it. That might help. Okay, let's try this again. Go into Swagger. Okay, now you can see that we have our get by ID, our put mapping, delete mapping. But first, we're going to have to create a user. So we'll just do it this way. Kyle, Chris, Jacob, and there we go. We got all that. So we'll just make sure that we have all of them. There we go, Kyle, Chris, Jacob. Now we want to get by ID, check it out. Let's see, that should be Jacob. There we go. Returns Jacob. And now let's update. So right here, just going to update the first one. We'll call this Kyle Miles. Execute. There we go. Now we can get our users again. We see that Kyle is updated to Kyle Miles. Now we want to delete. Now delete me. So user one has been deleted. So now let's get our users again. And guess what? User one's deleted. And this is the basic part of what you need to finish the project for Promeneo. You don't have to do much more than this. This is just the basic. But I wanted to get into a couple other things.
Hey Kyle, I have a question. So I know how this is the main part of like Java, making users, deleting users, steps, adding steps. But when it comes down to real life, how does this apply to everyday life? Like how do we use it? Is this like a login?
Well, this right here, I kind of wanted to get into this maybe a little bit further down the road with like Spring Security and logging in. Right now, I just wanted to show you guys a pretty easy way to create a Spring JPA project. Um, that's why I used user because down the road I was thinking about doing a Spring Security, show you guys how to log in and verify that through your database using a hashing method and hashing everything to the database. So that's a that's my idea.
So when it comes down to passwords, credit cards, and I don't know, any additional private information, this MySQL knows it's gonna be private information and camouflage it, or is it just
No, no, you have to do the dirty work, man. Like
okay?
it's a lot of stuff that you'll have to do. This part that we're doing right here is pretty simple compared to the Spring Security part. Although I wouldn't say that the Spring Security part is extremely hard. It's just you're gonna have to learn a few other things. There's gonna have to be a lot more going on. Like the SQL won't do that. And if you, this is the reason why I didn't put password in there yet, is because I don't want, if we're putting password, we don't want it in the database as a clear text password. Once we get to that part, I'll show you. We'll first start off with a no-op password just to show what it looks like in the database and how you don't want to do it. Like you do not want to do a no-op password in production. And you don't want to push something to your GitHub that talks about a no-op password. That just looks bad. We'll be using bcrypt to hash our passwords later on. Um, like I said, this is something that's down the road, but I wanted to knock out a few things to show you the basis. Another thing that I want to get into, and we'll just do this real quick, is many to one to many. And then I want to do a custom repository method. I don't think that this class is going to be too terribly long tonight. Next week, it might be a little bit crazier. I'm not sure what I'm going to plan on doing. I have a couple things in mind. I think I want to cover DTOs a little bit because DTOs are something that you would actually use in the real world, where right here, we're just using entities, right, for all of our data and stuff. Instead, in the real world, you're not, if we have like user and password, we don't want to pass on to the client. We don't want to pass them the password, right? We want to hide the password. We might give them their username or an email or whatnot, but we don't want to put out the password there either, even if it's a hashed password. Like that's just bad practice. Um, so DTOs are something, they're a little bit more complex, but I wanted to tonight finish up what we started last week and just get everybody comfortable with the bare minimum of how to set up a project for JPA. Are there any questions up to this point?
No, but I do have a comment. JPA, um, like the added security benefit of JPA versus JDBC is that I think it avoids SQL injections, right?
Yeah, it helps to avoid the SQL
Yeah.
injections. Yeah.
And then SQL injections are what hackers use to steal passwords, right?
Um, they can. There's a lot of things that can take like there's so many different security
Yeah.
vulnerabilities. It's easy to say that SQL injections are the only thing that you have to worry about, but there's cross-site request forgery that you have to worry about too, and I'll cover that in a later date. But that basically has to deal with you know how things handle with your cookies and whatnot, and going from site to site. There's also like session tokens. Like I don't know if you guys have heard about some of the YouTubers lately. They've been they've been getting a session token hacked where there's a sponsor for a video that reaches out to them and they send them a bad link or something and it looks legit. But anyways, when they do that, when they click on that, what happens is they initiate some sort of malware that downloads itself and it actually steals the session token of your YouTube account. And YouTube doesn't have proper safeguards against those session tokens timing out and stuff. So they don't even have to get your password and take over your YouTube account. So there's just a numerous amount of security vulnerabilities out there. What the best practice for security is always layered approaches, right?
Mhm.
There's going to be times when you might cover all the basics, but there might be something, there's always going to be something that hackers out there will take advantage of. It's just kind of what hackers do. They're always looking for new vulnerabilities and stuff. So, I mean,
Like
you just want to make it harder for them. That's the biggest thing.
like recently with well, not too recently, but a little recently, like with LastPass, the reason why they got hacked or why they had that whole hacking incident was because of an employee who had an old version of like I think it was like uh, a place where you could put like your own like TV shows or any recordings that you had, like family movies or anything like that, and store on there. He had an old version and it wasn't technically updated with the safeguards. So because he used that computer with his work such stuff, basically someone who was a hacker found out, saw that he was weak in that part because he didn't have it updated. If he had the if he had the application updated, it wouldn't have been a weak point for them to get through. Or if he did something like a virtual database, sorry, not a virtual database, a virtual machine, where basically they have different quote unquote machines to run different areas of whatever you do, like a virtual machine for your work, virtual machine for your like bank, virtual machine for you just like, playing video games. Um, that wouldn't have happened. So hackers are very, very, very creative.
Yeah,
And it's SQL injections are just kind of like the like an oldest trick in the book. So when you do get hacked that way, it's just like, wow, that's pathetic. Or when
yeah,
you don't see that they hash their passwords or they hash them in a manner of which that everyone who has the same password, like password 123, the hashing is not double hashed. So you know that that group of people that have the same like hash code encryption all have the same password. And all you have to do is just like figure out one person in that groups and then you have everyone.
yep. There's this one hashing method that they used to use. It's called MD5. Never use MD5 because there's something called rainbow tables that you can look up online. And like what Jolene was talking about is they can match those rainbow tables. And if they get into the database and they see that and you're using MD5, they can check out the rainbow tables and then it doesn't matter. They have your password even if you've hashed it. You want to have a strong hashing algorithm. That's why, we're going to be using bcrypt. There's a lot of them out there, but we're going to be using bcrypt because it's kind of the standard right now, at least for Java and databases. Yeah,
Kyle, can
it's
I ask you a question about what we're doing right now?
what we're doing right now. So
Not general, but like a general question, not like what are we doing? Um, so I know how like we're doing back end developing, right? And
mhm.
there's the JDK, there's the JPA. My question is, we're back developing code to make a website run, but how does a front end developer have this already made for them just to like pull it and like use it and add stuff to it?
I think that this would be a better question to ask Jolene because she has both front end and back end experience.
There's so many memes about like what people and front end people not having communication. But usually, um, like right now we're using a front end UI to have our back end application be seen in the front end, which is through Swagger. And you can do the same thing in front end where you just get a cred or get mock API and do it that way. Now, if you wanted to do both ends, you would have to be like understanding what you need. So right now, the user ID and username, that's kind of like an object. So how I do front end is I do JavaScript, React, HTML, CSS, all that. So with JavaScript, I would probably either make function based with these in mind or class based with these in mind. So I need the information to be sent to the database, and I just need to know that it's properly being sent to the database, stored in the database, and I can see it come back from the database. Therefore, I can take that object and properly display it in a manner of which I want it to. So if I wanted to send like an image or something like that, all I have to know is that it's being properly stored, properly sent, and therefore I can take what I know is coming to me and going to me and put it wherever I want it in the basically on the website.
Awesome. That makes total sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. But there's tons of memes of people being like, when backend coders try to do front end or CSS, or vice versa, where a front end programmer is doing something in backend, they're like, I don't like it.
Yeah, I know. When I was messing around with some HTML and CSS and JavaScript, I just returned a string in the Java program. I was like, oh man, this is horrible. So messy. All you see is green. There isn't anything that you can really tell about anything.
Yeah. The working on front end first and then seeing back end, like since I did play with like different APIs, usually you just cred because that's free. And like for 3 days you pay for like $3. And so for my final project, I just did that. But didn't have to. But like the response bodies that we're seeing right here are very reminiscent of when I would look back to what data was being stored on the API when I saw it via the API and what it's returning and what it's storing. So I would see it on my end, and then I would show that that is being properly sent to the API and that they're communicating properly. So everything that I'm seeing here is basically what the front end developer wants to see everything on basically like if they have access to the API or they can see a list, this is what they would see. And then they would use that information to be better. But this is just very familiar to me because I have seen it in the front end and know what you can do with it.
So what if you didn't know the back end and you're a front end developer, not knowing how the back end should look? Would that run into troubles?
That's kind of why you have supervisors and like senior developers and sort of like project managers. Or maybe not mostly project managers, but like, you have the people that will either do the communicating or you'll be on a specific part of the front end. Again, usually you won't be like building something completely from scratch or making something new. So like if you worked for some place crazy like Google, even though mm, uh like if you work for some place like that, you're not gonna be remaking the entire Like if you work for Twitter, you're not gonna actually remake the tech stack like Elon Musk tweaks.
You're
You
gonna
just can't do that
you're
not
gonna have to
overnight.
learn to read the code and manage code that might be a little bit outdated too.
Hmm. Actually, recently a backend developer, backend mentor who was working here before, her name was Rachel. Uh, like React is on React 18. That's like what React is currently at, quote unquote. She is working on React 8 at her like place of work. So
Wow, that's not uncommon though,
yeah, no,
because
no,
a
that's what
lot
I'm
of
saying.
times dependencies get broken and whatnot. And that's
Hmm.
what I was talking about with DTOs and stuff. Like this is why I might go into it next week, is um it helps to have DTOs in place where it doesn't break the front end. Um,
Hmm.
particularly if you have to update the database. Because the entities are fine for what we're doing right here. But if you're actually going to do this in real life, you're going to have to use DTOs. It's just a way to kind of separate the repository or the database layer from the service layer and whatnot. So I actually want to get into two more things. We won't go too much longer. I want to get into the many to one mapping. That's going to be fairly quick. And then I want to show an example of a custom method in the repository. So yeah, won't be as long. I don't think it'll be as long as last week. Okay, so the first thing is we're going into the user entity, and down here, I'm going to do an annotation called one many. And we're gonna be mapped by user. Now we're going to create a new entity out of this. So we're first going to create a set of email equals new hash set. Oops. Okay. Oops. I have to load the typos. And now it's going to do that to me. Oh, I hate that. Okay. All right. So now we're going
Press
to have to
insert
create.
again
What's that?
if you want to get rid of the blinking block.
Oh, is that how you do that?
Yeah, just press insert again.
Okay, cool. So we're going to create a class called email. And we're just going to put in the model. And here we're going to do very similar stuff to what we have been doing. But we're just going to show the other side of the many to one to many mapping. So right here, we want to add entity. Oh, 1 second. Getter, add letter, and ID. Rated.
Kyle, what commands do you do for the imports?
The commands. Oh, I do control space, and then I
Okay.
select which one that I want to import. That way it goes a little bit quicker. Do strategy. For some reason, generation type, you can't do that. It doesn't do that. And we'll do private long email ID. So you actually have to manually import this one. Okay. And on this side, we'll do many to one. And we will call join column name equals user ID. And this is a little bit different than what we've done with the sets and whatnot. Right here, we want to actually call the user entity. And one thing I like to do is actually go back to user on the one-to-many side. I will actually generally JSON ignore this. And generally I'll take this out, but for now, we're just going to keep it that way because we haven't done anything with role or email. So might as well just ignore that for the time being. But this is how you do your mappings for one-to-many, many-to-one. It's pretty simple. So you got your many-to-many. This is the other side to your many-to-many. And typically one side, I will JSON ignore it, and the other side, I won't. Like for this side, I wouldn't JSON ignore this. I would for this one, because the ID is actually a foreign key to email. That means that a user can have many different emails, okay? That's what the gist of it is about. All right. That's it for the model for what I want to show right there. Let's see. Okay, now I want to get into something that I thought was pretty neat. And first we're going to go to user service. We'll create a new public optional. And it will return a list of user. I'll call this one get users order by name. Do int page, int rows. So Chris, this is what I was talking about, how you can add the unimplemented methods. So we'll just do that real quick. As you can see, has all this right here at override.
So what is the difference between unimplemented and implemented? Implemented means that you add on to it, right? You make it keep going.
Well, because user service IMPL implements user service, anytime we update this user service interface, it's going to throw an error at us saying that we have unimplemented methods that we need to add in. So that's basically what it is, because we're using the user service interface. Okay, so this, we're going to do pageable. We'll call this list equals page request of, we'll call our page and rows. There we go. Then we will return user repository dot find by order by username. And then we will pass in the list. Now we're going to have to create a method, find by order by username, pageable, and type user repository. So we'll just do that. And this looks good. It's important to remember this needs to be in a certain way. Basically, what this is saying is that we want to select by username and order. We want to order it by the username as well, and it will order it in an ascending type. This is very important. We just can't name this whatever it is. So I suggest you guys kind of play around with this because you can do some pretty cool things with it. But there is a logic to this method name. It's not just naming it whatever we want to. As you can see, this is the page request. All right. That's it for our service and repository. Now we will go into the controller. The reason why I did this one was it kind of gets two birds with one stone. It shows you something unique with Pageable, but it also shows you the ordering nature, how you would call that sort of stuff, and you can order by. You can get things by, if you have like enums and stuff like that, you can get them by their enum name, and it's pretty cool. I would suggest just playing around with it, see what you can do. But I just wanted to show you guys something cool right off the bat. So we want to do a get mapping. And for this, we will call it pages. Very much similar to what we've done above, but we want to make sure that we're calling an optional list user. We'll call this a get users order by name. This part doesn't matter, the naming. It's just generally the naming that you want in your user repository is the important thing. And we will call our variables will be int page and int rows. Turn new I'll make sure the optional is in there. Just copy this. I'm gonna have to make sure that's in there. Okay. And similar to everything above, user service dot we'll get users order by name, and same thing as above, HTTP status dot okay. So one thing that I like doing with this though is I like to start on a page of one. So one thing that you can do is do page -1 right there. And I'll show you why in a minute. Okay. Now we got that started up. And we will share Swagger. Okay, I'll create a new Swagger. Okay, now we got our pages, but since our database is dropping every time, we want to create some more users. And here, Kyle, Lean, Chris, Jacob, and then we'll just add in some random names. Okay, we have 8. Okay, I just want to do 10 just to kind of show you guys. All right, so now when we try it out, it's asking for pages and rows, and this is going to order it by the name. So first we'll just do 10, and this is how it does it. Okay, so Chris, Debbie, Jacob, John, Jolene, Kyle, Mary, Mike, Sam, Tom. This way you can get an alphabetical order. It doesn't have anything to do with anything else other than the username. So now, what else can we do? We can do 5 rows. So it'll only return the top 5. And then we can go to page 2. We can execute the final 10. Or we can do 2 rows and it's only going to give 2 rows at a time. Chris and Debbie, Jacob, John, Jolene, Kyle, Mary, Mike, and Sam and Tom. So what happens if, let's say, we want to go to page 6? What's going to happen? There's nothing there. Because we returned an optional, it's not going to crash anything. It's just going to give us what it has. And the same thing can be shown for doing, let's say, 100 or 1000. It's only going to give us what's already in there. So I thought this one is pretty cool. This is actually something that I know that certain websites will use pages and whatnot for, pages and rows. So I thought that would be a cool little thing for you guys to do. And I'll want to share one thing, go back to this. If you don't have this -1 here and you just have page, it's going to start at 0. So the first page is going to be 0. So that's why I put page -1. All right. Do we have any questions about that?
Kyle, I assume you'll be sharing the GitHub with this.
Oh yeah. I'll definitely update this afterwards. But yeah, I just wanted to show that to you guys. That I thought that was a pretty neat thing to kind of introduce you to the custom methods in the repository. Like I said, this needs to be by a certain way. If you don't have the right naming, it's not going to be able to find it in the repository. And when you want to order something, you want to find by order, then by whatever you're trying to order, right? So find by, order by, username. And we could do the same thing if we wanted to do password, which you never want to do that with password. It'd be find by, order by password, or find by, order by email address, that sort of thing. And it's important to make sure that your capitalizations are correct, because every time there's like for the username, it's going to translate this as user underscore name. Because of this capital N, it will make it an underscore.
Now I have a brief question. When it comes down to implements, imports, sorry, implements. How do we know out of the options we get which one we actually need before choosing the first one?
Well, sometimes there can be issues like there can always be multiple ones, right? Um, I would say the one that really can be
Options.
kind of
Kind
a
of-
pain is the request body. Request body can be there's Swagger and there's also the Spring Framework. Um, you need to do the Spring Framework version of this. And if you're having an issue with one, I would suggest trying to use another one or look up what that import actually does.
Yeah, the problem with that is like when you're so far in the project, like it doesn't run, and it's because of one import that's like who knows where it's at, you know?
Yeah. Like last week when I was showing how to do this, yeah, I came up with that issue with request body, and it took me a few minutes to figure out what was going on with it, and it's like, it was the wrong import.
So for example, on user repository, we were just there. Yeah, that optional, that first one, I get like six implements.
Yeah, you want to use util,
Which one? The first one, Java?
java.util.
Awesome. Okay, cool.
And for pageable, make sure it's the Spring Framework data.domain.
You can
Okay.
always triple check on GitHub as well.
Mm-hmm.
So your GitHub doesn't actually have any, it's just blank. But maybe when you upload, when you push, maybe I'll be able to mess with it.
Yeah. I'm gonna push it after this. I didn't upload week 2 yet because I wanted to code it for you guys.
I was about to say,
Awesome.
it's like it's like it's currently here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, but he has it. Like he said in the first week that he had another one that he needed to push. I was like, oh, so that's the one he pushed. I was confused.
Yeah, he already pushed week 1, didn't you?
Yeah, I
That I thought.
pushed week 1 and I put a branch of week 1. So
Yeah.
I'll put this as a branch week 2 and then I'll merge it into the main.
Mhm.
So
Though when it comes to like errors like that, like when you're like, why isn't this working? I don't understand. It's sometimes best to go in order. So like with JDBC, I always like have people go, well, first after checking their home.xml, because sometimes it's in there. But like usually it'll be like, okay, let's go to the controller since it's JDBC, then the service, then the DAO. We're gonna see if we can find any inconsistencies, anything where it doesn't match, any import where it doesn't make sense. And with JPA, you're gonna want to do relatively the same thing by going in order and seeing where in the process there could be a typo or an incorrect import.
Gotcha.
Also, I have a silly question, but in
yeah.
the console, it says like user 0 underscore dot user underscore name as user underscore NAM. There's no E. Is that because the E is being replaced with a 2? It doesn't matter, or it's
It's just how
Hibernate does it?
yeah, it's just how Hibernate does it. It's kind of calling
Okay.
it as an alias, right? And as you can see here, this is what we're actually doing. So select user, and what I want to get to is order by username ascending limit. So when we do that pageable, what we're calling on is limit. So there's little things that it's not very intuitive sometimes when you're doing this stuff. I don't have limit anywhere in here, but when I call it on pageable, it calls on limit.
I was just wondering why it replaced the E
It
twice.
does that. You know,
Well, technically twice, but
I think it's using it as an alias. I think that's what it's doing.
makes
That's
sense.
actually a good thing to look up. I'll try and look that up actually, but yeah, there's just so much to this. I just want to show you guys some of the bare minimum. And this is really fun getting into these custom methods. So I would suggest if you really want to get to know JPA and how it does things, and hibernate, mess around with these names, because that's how you're going to be able to do some really cool stuff with your gets.
There also might be like a GitHub repo that would have like a ton of these just with like definitions, but
Yeah, and if you find one, share it with me. That'd be great. A lot of this
oh,
I actually stumbled upon figuring this out. Like I didn't find it out. I just stumbled upon it, and it's like, whoa, this is cool.
it's a shame how little like
Carl?
uh YouTube channels there are on JPA, or at least what I've seen. I've seen like a little bit, but not much.
What's up, Jacob?
Is there a particular reason that you started working with the service layer and then went to the control layer?
Today?
Yeah.
I like writing out the service layer first. I know that some people like doing the controller first. I don't know. I just like starting with the service layer. I go from the entity model to the service to the repository and then to the controller. That's just my convention. You don't have to do it that way. That's just how my brain works with it.
Hi, Anna.
I mean, it certainly looked good in terms of presentation.
Mhm.
I was just wondering if there was a logical advantage to it as well.
For me, writing out the methods in the user service and then doing stuff in the service implementation. There might be some times where I might want, this is kind of where you're going to do your dirty work here. Your controller is pretty much the same, right? So finding out how I do everything, what I want to do, like this optional list user, if I was coming to the get mapping, when I'm trying to figure out something for like pages and stuff, I wouldn't necessarily think of that right off the bat. So for me, going into the service and the repository, just kind of tinkering around with that first instead of going to the controller and making sure that my application actually runs before jumping into the controller. That's kind of how I look at it.
Huh.
Because if you do not have the right, and I'll actually do this. Let's say find order by username. It's already throwing errors. Oh, wait, never mind. That's because this is not correct. All right, let's try this again. See, doesn't like it. And you can see that it failed to create query. Go up. Could be all this sort of stuff, but this is just because of how we named it. That by is important. And the same thing with other stuff in there too. There is a reason, there's a rhyme and a reason for naming this method. And if you don't do it correctly, it's not going to work. It will just give you an error, shut down the program. But if you do it with a find by, order by username, it will work. And like I said, if we had other things like find by order by email, we could do it that way too. And if we have enums or something like that, then we could do find by the enum name. So like I said, it's fun to play around with it. You can also make it descending as well. And you would just, instead of, like I said, this, when you do order by, it's going to do this on, it's going to do this already. You don't have to name ascending, but what is it, descending like this? Or I can't remember what it is, to be quite honest. I've never done descending. I think it's DSC, to be quite honest.
I
But
believe so.
that way, we can try this out actually. Let's see. This will
Oh, you
tell
forgot
us.
the
Oh,
I think you have to spell out the word. Yeah,
DESC.
I want to say I want.
Okay, let's try this out. Well, it likes it.
Oh,
So,
hey, Mimo, awesome app. If anyone used it before,
Oh, Mimo.
that's how I know that that word is the way it was spelled.
I didn't know how they actually did it within the um what's it called? In SQL.
Oh yeah.
I've never used it. So let's just do some random data in here. Um,
Hey Kyle, is it do you want to spell out the whole word? This distinct values like DISTINCT? Or
so this is ordering it by descending. So it should come up with the
Like Z first,
Z
then A.
first. How many do we have? We have 6. Yeah, that should be fine.
Got Z and A, the big players.
So we'll just do,
so from my understanding, the cient
yeah.
means you pick out like not copies, right?
What's that?
So like for example, if you have like multiple same names, same last names, like it'll pick out not the multiple names, but just once. That's what that is, right?
Um, so this is ordering by the username. Right now, we don't have it as non-null or anything or unique. So I suppose you could have the same username the way it is set up right now. Like I said, I just wanted to do something very simple. Um, we'll get into non-null and all that sort of stuff at some point, but like I said, I just wanted to get you guys jump started on some of the stuff, and yeah, that worked just fine. Everything is descending.
I just knew the DESC because I played around with SQL a lot before the curriculum got updated.
Yeah, and there you go, DESC. Yeah, I never messed around with DESC. I never did the descending. It's like I knew ascending, but you know,
Mhm.
well, yeah. Anyways,
Mhm.
we'll just do the regular.
Yeah, well, it makes more sense to do the regular.
Yeah. But I mean, that's something that you guys can play around with, and I think that I'll have a lot of fun doing that sort of stuff. I wanted to do this because I see some real world benefit from doing this with the pageable. So you could have pages and rows, whatnot. But overall, I just thought it was kind of cool.
I liked it.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments?
I have one more question. Sorry. So if I want to like add stuff to it, which I probably may never do, but let's say I do, and I say, well, I have to contact you first, or can I just push it to the to my fork repository?
Yeah, you can push it to your fork.
Okay, and then you view it from there, type stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can always do like a pull request or whatnot, and you can merge it into the main, right? If it can merge, that sort of thing. But yeah, if you just want to do whatever, if you want to just do this and on your own and do something a little bit more unique, then just do it that way.
No, I think it'll be kind of cool just to see that happen. But no, it's nothing like, oh, I gotta do it, nothing like that.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that Kyle's not, I don't think Kyle's being paid for this, so this is just him doing it out of the kindness of his heart.
No,
Oh, okay.
I'm
Yeah,
I'm not getting paid for this now.
I
I'm
didn't, I
just
didn't think so, even though I keep
I'll
dropping
tell you
hints.
copy, Kyle. Don't worry about it. Send me the link.
well, I thought that this would be really beneficial for everyone to learn. And like I said, I think it was last week, there's just not a lot of good A to Z learning for beginners out there. There's so much bouncing around that you have to do to find just simple stuff like this, at least for JPA. So I wanted to just create something where we can take logical steps to building up a project and not just get overly complicated right off the bat. Just create something. It's a good little demo for you guys to play around with and tinker with, and you guys can expand more on it as we go on, or create something new. You know, now you have the tools to understand the basics, and we can go into a little bit more advanced stuff going forward. And like I said, next week, I'm not sure if we're going to do DTOs or if we're going to jump into spring security. I think I might do DTOs.
Either way, I really appreciate this because like,
It's like an extra class. It's perfect.
yeah, it's like, well, yeah, Kyle's an excellent teacher, but also like, you said like you learned a lot of this stuff through documentation and such like that, mostly, right, Kyle?
Yeah, documentation, some YouTube channels, but like some YouTube channels just kind of all over the place. You know, it's like you go down one path and it's just down a rabbit hole. And it's like I was telling someone about doing this. It's like, you know, you kind of have to go through multiple haystacks to find the needle that you want.
So
But
Kyle,
yeah, I really appreciate that because with my ADHD and dyslexia, it's harder for like I do have the touch text to speech thing, so I can read documentation easier. But it's a lot easier when I see like this sort of rundown of it, because I don't know, it's just nicer and it's easier for me to accomplish with my ADHD and dyslexia.
it really does. Kyle, when it comes down to the final test, do you think I'm gonna definitely understand what to do in the final test, understanding like annotation and JPA?
Well, like I said, I think you have pretty much all the tools that you need for the final project, just from what I've shown you guys over the last two weeks. Um, Obviously, you're going to have, let's
More.
say, an email repository, a role repository, a email service, and all this stuff's going to have to be duplicated. All we did was user. So everything that, but it's pretty simple because you have all that you need to know right here, right? All this basic stuff. You don't need to do this. I mean, you can if you want to look cool, but
Mhm.
you know, just this stuff right here. That's all you need to know. And you can just refactor everything in here and call it email instead, right?
Mhm.
And do the same thing with the controller. You know, this is all you need to do for the final project. All this right here, this will cover everything. You just need to make sure that you have all those different repositories, all those different services and service implementations, and the same thing with the controllers.
Mhm. And also
And
that like we have a many to many here, and do we have a one to many relationship? Probably the one to many is,
Mhm.
yep,
right here.
that. But you have to make sure that that is displayed, uh, like in the project, which you can see right here. But like, if this is what was submitted final wise, you'd have to do some more work to get 100 because you need to make sure that all the tables, like you would have to have, like Kyle said, the email and the role. Because I just want to make sure that you don't submit something that is partly done and get a bad grade. Because
No, no, obviously I'm not gonna just go copy Kyle and stuff.
oh no 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 no, I'm just saying you have to have three entities. Um, Basically users. So user is done. You have your full CRUD. Perfect, wonderful. But you would also need to do the same with role and email. Because you need at least three tables. You need a many-to-many relationship and a one-to-many relationship. Kyle has the one-to-many and the many-to-many, so he got that. But but if he wanted to hand this in theoretically as a final project, he would have to just put in role and email, and that's really easy with what he just said. Just basically like copy paste and replace what you need.
Yep. You copy, paste, and then refactor everything that you
Mm-hmm.
need to change this to role or user. Change you don't want to say save user. You know, save role. It doesn't really matter, but it's just for readability, like changing these methods. But there's something cool that you can do is you can go in here and you could refactor. And I just want to show you this
I'm cool with it.
role, and it shows all those. Isn't that cool?
Love it.
All right.
Yep.
Yes.
So that's something that you can do with refactor. Refactor is really nice to use.
Yes. But yeah, this is basically almost a done complete project, but now but with like the DTOs and especially the spring security, it's gonna be a lot cooler.
Yeah, that's stuff. What we'll get into in the next couple of weeks. This isn't necessarily anything that you'll need to do for your final project. This is just kind of extra stuff.
So that's a
So
really good question because I know it's Spring Boot Suite, but who knows? We're creating SQL databases. My question is, can we ER this? Can we make this a diagram?
oh yeah, that's a good question. Let's check if we can make this a diagram. We'll go into workbench. You see my workbench?
Mhm.
Now I can.
You can?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll just refresh, go into users. See, it has all those tables, right? So we'll go up to database, reverse engineer. Next, next, users, next, next, execute. Next, finish. There you go. There's your ERD.
Mhm.
And we didn't create any of this in SQL. We did all this in JPA.
That's so nice.
Isn't that cool?
Mhm.
Sorry if you heard snapping. My cat decided to be a trash mammal and tried to eat trash. The only thing that stinks about this is that I wish that my SQL Workbench could like extract the SQL for you, because I believe that is still required for the final project.
Oh, you want to see how to do that?
Yes,
We
please.
can forward engineer. So we can have all this other stuff in there, right?
Yes,
But
I'd love to give, people who do JPA an easy way so they don't have to, you know,
this
write
has
SQL.
a little bit more into it than what you would normally use if you're just writing your own SQL, like the constraints and stuff like that. But yeah, this it will create all the SQL for you right here. But the one thing it won't do is if you want to put in information into these tables, right?
Like inserts.
Mm-hmm. But yep, there's your SQL right there. And you can do everything right there. But the only way you can do that is making sure after you've reverse engineered it, you want to forward engineer it and then go through everything right there.
Nice.
So like I said, it's a little bit weird looking from what you would probably do normally. Because like I said, it has all those constraints and stuff like that. But you can have the SQL for creating it right there, and it'll be basically the same thing. And a lot of that has to do with how JPA creates the constraints and all that sort of stuff. So that's why it does those sort of things. And also, my SQL Workbench when you forward engineer, it just kind of adds a little bit extra to it. All right.
My SQL Workbench touch, if you will.
How, as somebody with long-term experience with SQL and not very much else, um, this may not be a valid question, but can you use JPA to represent more complex SQL like outer joins and things like that?
Yeah, sure. Of course you can. A lot of the stuff, if you can't do it through like the mappings and stuff, there's also queries that you can get into. You can actually do SQL queries, and you can do that a little bit more refined, kind of like JWC stuff, but you call a actual query and you pass it along as a string. So you could actually do any custom SQL that you want to do.
Oh, okay.
Nice. Cool.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Any more comments?
Thank you.
Nice
Oh, you're
job,
welcome.
man.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, Kyle, are you going to be writing the first JPA book?
Not sure if it would be the first.
There's a lot to it, and I think that I still have quite a bit to learn about this stuff. There's definitely more to learn. It's a very deep topic. We have barely brushed the surface. So, like I said,
There's always more to learn though.
oh yeah.
Students were bringing up things that I've never even thought about. And like someone's like, why do we even need this annotation? I'm like, let's go down the annotation rabbit hole and find out exactly what this annotation does. Because every annotation is slightly different.
Right. And like with JPA, annotations are pretty huge. And
Also in JDBC too. Because if you don't
yeah,
have that override somewhere auto-wired, it's gonna yell at you.
I
And
want
maybe
to
not like the day of, it'll be like weeks later.
I want to show you guys something, and I'll actually just do it into the controller. But in the post mapping, I use a request body, right? But you don't necessarily need to do that. What you can do, if you don't really like playing around with JSON, you can do request. Oh, I can actually get this correct. Request param, and let's say we want to do string name. Okay. And we'll say user, new user. Oh, wait, not that. New user equals new user. Then we can do new user dot set username, name. Then we can return new user. And we completely did away with all the JSON stuff. You did this a little bit with the deep cell stuff, but we can fire this up. I'll show you the difference. Before we were doing a response body, it was all pure JSON, but with this, don't have to deal with that. So do another Swagger, no post, you can see, oh, I don't have any of that stuff right there. All I need to do is the name. Just do Kyle, and there we go. I have the response body there. So you don't necessarily need to do request body. There's various ways of doing this stuff. This is a more, I think, cleaner thing for at least Swagger. But yeah, I mean, there's different ways of playing around with that sort of stuff. There's no one size fits all solution. If there's something that you'd rather do, make it's cleaner for you, then you can do that. But yeah, I definitely wanted to show you that you can do this a different way too. Oops.
Control Y.
There we go. And Control Z. There we go. Save it. Okay. Yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to cover tonight. And
At the very bottom, did you have the /1 at the end?
yes.
Line.
Yeah,
Okay,
this
just double
one?
checking. Yeah.
And
Just
like I said, for this one, we want to do that. So we start out at page 1 and we don't start at page 0. because it will start out at page 0. And I just figure, the first page, intuitively, is 1, right? Not 0. So yeah, you don't have to do this. You can just put page in there as well. But that's how I like doing it, because I like
Makes
doing
more
1, 2,
sense.
3.
Especially because everything starts, like, logically, everything starts with 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most people, they don't deal with array lists and arrays and stuff like that, and the indices starting at 0, right? Everybody
Mhm.
thinks of 1 being the beginning.
So if you don't put any number, like you don't put the -1, does it start at 1 or does it start at 0?
Starts at 0.
Okay.
Computer logic.
Yep.
This has been a great class, though. Thank you again.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, I wanted to make sure that everybody has the tools to flesh this whole thing out. Obviously, we didn't get to roll our email, but like we talked about earlier, it's just copy paste for everything else. Everything that has user on it, you want to
Then
do.
refactor.
Yeah, you do the refactor. The refactor will save you so much time.
Heck yeah.
Okay, well, I am going to call it for the night. Like I said, next week probably do DTOs. I think that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Have a good night, Chris.
Night, Chris.
All right.
See you tomorrow, next week.
Bye.
Thanks for the class.
Yeah.
Yep. If there's anything that you guys aren't sure about, make sure to reach out to me, and I'll get back to you guys as soon as possible. And I hope you guys have a great night. Okay.
Thank you. You too.
All right, you too.
You too.
Thanks, Kyle.